Good morning. I have another imagination story for you today. And this one is about two sisters. So one warm and summery evening, two sisters decided that they were going to sleep out underneath the stars. There was a beautiful meadow behind their house where they played most days in the grass that was as high as their waists. They had never slept out there before, but tonight was the night. So they got their sleeping bags and they made their way out in the dark, and the moon was half full, or maybe it was half empty. It depended on who you asked. But either way, there was just enough light that they could make their way out there, and they put their sleeping bags down in the soft, sweet grass, and they were about 10 feet apart, so close together, but not too close. And they laid on their backs, looking up at the stars. After a little while, fireflies started flying around in the air above their heads. And then a while after that, some little field mice who had been really quiet and still as the girls made their way into the field. Now the field mice started to move again, and they scurried about collecting seeds and working on their nests. And the girls laid so still that eventually the mice started to just run over their legs instead of going around them. Now, of course, the girls couldn't see in the dark. All they could see were little shadows here and there. But they laid there, and eventually they both fell asleep. Then, at the very first light of dawn, before the sun would even make its way up over the horizon, a white-tailed deer who had bedded down nearby for the night suddenly got up and bounded away. And the sound of that heavy animal on the soft ground woke the two girls. And one sister hurried up and she grabbed her sleeping bag and she ran inside to where Dad was already making breakfast. "Good morning, my love," he said. "How was your night?" "It was terrifying," she said. "First, I was laying there on my back looking at the stars, and then all these big insects started flying around my head, and I was sure that they were going to sting me with their venomous stingers. And then, after that, rats came from everywhere and they were running over my legs and going all around me. It was so scary. Eventually, I fell asleep, but then I woke up just as a giant wolf ran past my head." "Oh my," said Dad, "that does sound terrifying. Why don't you go upstairs and get cleaned up and come down for a nice breakfast?" And she went upstairs, just as the other sister came inside. "Good morning, my love," said Dad. "How was your night?" "Oh, it was magical," said the other sister. "I was laying on my back, looking at the stars, and then one by one, stars started blinking and coming down, doing a beautiful little blinking light show in the air above my head. And then I could feel the fairies coming out, and they did dances on my legs as I lay there in the dark. It was pretty magical. Eventually, I fell asleep. And then I woke up just as a unicorn got up and bounded away into the forest." "Wow," said Dad, "that does sound magical. Why don't you go upstairs and get cleaned up and come down for a nice breakfast?" Sometimes our imaginations can have a big impact on how we experience things. The way something happens to one person can feel very different to somebody else. I miss you and I love you, and I look forward to imagining with you again soon.